Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Prizepicks and the Gametime app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, brought to you by Prizepicks, powered by Prizepicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 172nd episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you very much, everybody, for listening. 172 episodes. That reminds me of one of the things my son Finn is fascinated with, Mick. He wonders when the NHL teams are going to have to go to three digits for jerseys on their back when they start retiring too many numbers. That was a question he had at his last Bruins game, and I thought that was a pretty good one. I wonder if we'll ever see the day when they have to go to three digits on the back of the uniform. What do you think?
The only thing I can say is I never thought I'd see the day where the Bruins had more 90s in their lineup than teens.
Seriously.
So if we're there, then how far away can that be? And will everybody wind up doing what the Toronto Maple Leafs did, and that is retire two or three numbers and then honor, a couple dozen, with banners and knights.
Yeah, and not take them out of the rotation.
And not take them out of circulation. But that was only really a problem from a logistical standpoint when Lou Lamoriello wasn't the only guy in the league who was trying to put his players into hockey numbers. As I used to know them, which in my day was 1 through 30 and 35.
Yep.
And then it just every decade seemed to add a new bracket of 10. The Bruins certainly did this. In the 80s, the guys got into the 30s. In the 90s, they got into the 40s, and so on. And that's how it's gone right up. And you say to yourself, okay, it's getting there. We're banging on the ceiling.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned the 90s thing, though, last night. That's totally true, especially when they're on the ice together, skating together. It's like that 90s line,
Yeah, the 90s line. Yeah, that's a good one. That 90s line.
With me, that voice is Mick Colageo, longtime friend and colleague, joining me today. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work.
Rink Wrap blog. I live blog Bruins home games and occasionally on the road. And I write in the seasonal issues like Yearbook, Prospects, Future Watch, Money Power on the Bruins for the Hockey News.
Excellent. I'll check out all of that stuff out. Also, we're brought to you by Prizepicks. Download the Prizepicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prizepicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prizepicks, run your game. Let's also thank, back as a sponsor this week, Gametime, the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase for any kind of tickets, sports, comedy, concerts, theater, all that stuff. Terms do apply, but again, create an account on the Gametime app and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
Game time. And aren't you glad you're back, Game Time, so you get the game time from
You
Matt.
caught me by surprise. I had to warm up. Massaging the vocal cords.
Make sure you download that Gametime app. Red Sox season is getting underway soon. The opening day is in Japan, Mick. Major League Baseball's coming, so you want your Red Sox tickets, you want to get to the ballpark, go out and do that. All right. Mick, let's get into it with the Boston Bruins. 3 losses in a row. Tough ones. Bad loss in Ottawa that basically, I think, kind of slammed the door, I felt like, on any kind of flickering playoff hopes that this team might have.
If you can't beat Buffalo at home.
No, the Buffalo one. I'm talking about the Ottawa one. The Ottawa one, I think. I think that slammed the door on any realistic, especially where they felt, they'd played pretty well. They got a couple wins off the trade deadline. Guys came in and played okay. Like, they rattled the cages and got a response. But, we've seen that a few times with this year. And that's when I think it's a talent thing more than it's a something else. Is I just think they're not capable of sustaining that level of play that you rattle the cages, you get a little emotion, you get a little adrenaline pump, and they can win a couple, but they can't sustain it because they don't have the talent level and the roster depth to be able to do it. And some guys just aren't having good years, and you put all that stuff together, and it's really impossible to sustain. And we've seen that, when they fired Coach Jim Montgomery, there's been a couple times during the year when they've gone on semi-decent runs when there's been
that was actually a bump in their play. That one was. I didn't really take this one so much as a bump as it was that the Lightning were home, the Bruins were on the road. It was the exhale of the trade deadline, and they just went out and everybody just played freely, like not a care in the world, and it came together for them. And then the next one with Florida, the Panthers were toying with the Bruins in that game. They were having 5-on-5 power plays, and they weren't even using the boards to make passes, which was their MO for years against the Bruins. And this time they were just kind of crisscrossing around the puck and making plays and getting great shots on net. And then you could just tell they thought while they were making their changes one by one in the third period that, look, guys, a third goal would be nice if somebody gets it, but don't worry, we got this in the bag. And then Pasta miraculously invented a penalty on Florida by skating over a stick near the crease and falling, got a sympathy call. They score in the power play, and then the Bruins come alive, and then they get emotional about it, and it becomes and Florida must have been pissed after that game, the way that turned into a real messy affair. Because they thought they were going to sleepwalk their way out of there with the 2 points in their back pocket. And so I was kind of amused that they didn't get away with doing that.
Yeah, no. And the Bruins, and it's guys are playing desperate hockey right now. There's a little bit of that on their end where they played pretty well. But like I said, you can't sustain it when the talent just isn't there. And they haven't been able to do it. And the loss in Ottawa was too many guys not ready to play a game of that magnitude. Ottawa's ready to play. Ottawa looks like they meant it. And the Bruins just weren't able to match it once it got to a serious commitment level of this is what you need to play and the level you need to be at if you want to get into the playoffs and if you want to mean serious business down the stretch. And the Bruins just couldn't match that.
Ottawa Bruins.
and Ullmark outplayed Swayman in that game. And that's when I talk about guys having bad years.
That too.
I'm talking about Jeremy Swayman to a large degree, and that has hurt them quite a bit at a lot of different turns.
As much as more than anything else.
Of course. And that was what, you have Ullmark making an acrobatic, crazy, save of the year candidate at one end, and you have Swayman getting pulled after one period, giving up soft goals at the other. The difference, the gap, the chasm between those two this year, even though Ullmark's been hurt, has missed a bunch of games and hasn't been great, but when he's been healthy, he's been pretty good. But you could see the gap between the two right now and the way that they're performing, and it was really stark in that game. And then they come back, they get hammered by the Tampa Bay Lightning, ugly game, no shots on net, outshot 21-0 in the second period of that game. Just disgusting. And
20-minute power play.
Yeah, you could tell the players were embarrassed after it was over. And to be honest with you, last night, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. You felt like as soon as you saw stuff start happening in the second period, you're like, they're just hanging on. They're going to tie this. It's going to go to overtime, and it's not going to end well for them because they have not gotten bounces most of this year, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, I thought they were going to lose in regulation when Lowry threw that pass up the middle that got picked off.
Well, they tried
Buffalo
to.
had two chances.
They tried to. They weren't able to.
I was amazed that the Bruins got a point out of that game after that play because this has been Lowry lately. He's just been completely out of control. And I don't give a crap what anybody says about plus minus. Those numbers are telling.
Well, yeah, no, I actually thought he was better last night. That was a bad play. And I'm going to give him a mulligan on last night because he took a high stick in the face.
He did. He got wrecked. And
he had to go to the room, and then he came back. I'm going to give him credit for coming back and trying to play.
Me too.
And he was kind of messed up, I think, at that point. So, I'm going to cut him a lot of slack for what he did and the fact that he returned to that game. And he played over 20 minutes. He was a plus player. The two games before that, you're totally bang on. He was terrible. And a -7, I think, in those two games. And giving pucks up, being exploited in the D zone.
Yeah, and anytime I'm critical about an offensive defenseman who hasn't come of age and their propensity for being not great when the other team has the puck in their end and being reckless when they have it, that goes with the territory of the maturation process. My question always when it comes to Mason Lowry is basically, can the Bruins afford to develop him on the job? And right now, I say go great guns and get a better draft pick. Develop the heck out of him on the job right now. You know, he sure is fun to watch. He's competitive. I really like him. I just know that right now it's a doomed recipe.
It really is. And you know, I felt like last night for the first time too, Mick, after the game was over, there was resignation, big time in that locker room. Like, they're trying to put a positive spin on it. They're trying to do the best that they can. They're trying to be professional about it and end the season the right way, or, you know, at least give an honest effort based on the fans are paying a lot for the tickets and they're getting paid a lot of money to play hockey. Mm-hmm. But you can tell the emotion and the energy and all of that has been sucked out of them at this point because they know they're just playing out the string for the rest of the year.
They're not doing a great job of masking it anymore. It's pretty evident when you go in there and talk to these guys. I feel bad for them. They have to face us after these games, you know. And, you know, the Zacha stood up and talked. Morgan Geekie did, as he does so often.
Pasta was out there first guy.
Pasta was first and foremost. But, boy, you could see how tired he was with this whole thing.
He is. But, like, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I'm starting to see leadership stuff from him.
Yeah.
More.
It's weighed on him.
Even more than before. Yep. Like accountability. You know, he tried to block a shot towards the end of the game last night. Basically took one as he laid down in the crease to block a shot to try to, like, you know, save a goal and try to get that win for them. You know, the effort he's given, the way he's carried this team, the way he's been sort of a guy that has been accountable after they lose and has been there to answer the questions and try to say and do the right things. Like, I'm seeing him take over as the leader of this team.
No question.
And I'm seeing him want to do that.
He's accepting it.
And I think that's something to remark on, and that's something that's a positive, and that is a good thing to see, that, like, he's stepping into the void and the breach. And, things aren't going well, and, it's going to be an ugly end of the season. But I'm seeing a maturation from him as a leader, where I think he's starting to understand how hard it can be and how important it is to do and say the right things and to set a good example if you want to lead this team out of, like, what's a really dark time here to end this end of this season. And it seems like he's up to the task, which I will give him credit for.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you can't do it now, you can't do it during the good times and be credible. So it's important for him to put his stake in the ground right now. And I agree with you 100%. He's done it with his play on the ice, his competitiveness, the way he keeps on battling out there, and the way he keeps on facing us, taking our questions, the good ones, the bad ones, and everything in between. And he's been patient with it, and he's dragging players into the fight.
Yep.
And if a guy like Pasta is going to battle like that, you better. So I'm really getting great vibes out of him right now, which is definitely a silver lining.
Yeah, and it was great to see. You know, it was great to see their line bounce back too in that game against Buffalo. They had a couple of goals. They had the only 2 goals that the Bruins scored, and they were terrible against Tampa Bay. They had a tough night. I think they had 4 shots on goal total, no points on the score sheet, -7 combined for Pastrnak and Zacha and Geekie, and they struggled, and they were good against Buffalo last night. Better, certainly, and they have to be. Like, there's a lot of pressure on them to produce every night, to be the team's best line, to make things happen, especially when there's a lot of what I would call event-free hockey going on with the Boston Bruins these days, Mick, where
I like that phrase.
They're getting single shots on net periods all over the place. Like, they had 11 shots on net, second, third period, and overtime combined last night, which is a good period of work. And they did that in 2 full periods and an almost full overtime. Basically, they went into a shell after the first, it felt like. And I think it's going to be like this for the rest of the year, because I just don't think they have the ability to do more than that. And they're going to have,
when they do try, they leave themselves open. They leave with their jaw.
Right. 100%. So, like, they have to play conservative hockey and hope that they can score a few early and then just hang on for dear life afterwards.
Yeah. And, so this is It's kind of interesting watching the bubble now play musical chairs and jump in and out, and the teams that are in now, the teams that are out now, and the Bruins are actually now firmly entrenched just at the very bottom of that whole pack and practically helpless and hopeless. And
Yeah.
this slip in there, they got greasy palms and they're trying to hang on to a smooth surface here, and the streets below, it's just not good.
No, it isn't. But you know what? And it's tough for the players, Mick. But at the same time, this is the best outcome long term for this team with where they are right now. Like the worst of all would have been, I think, if they had somehow made the playoffs and got dusted in 4 games with the group that they have now. If they went on some kind of an inspired run down the stretch, won a bunch of games, and snuck in as the final wild card in the 8th seed,
21-6 goal margin.
Yeah, what's going to happen now is they're going to get a lottery pick. They're going to get a top 10 first-round pick, and they will have a legitimate chance to add a really good, talented young player to this team. Yes, this is not the deepest draft talent-wide. This is not going to be like the 2015 draft where there's everybody in the first round turns into an all-star level player.
Except.
But, yeah, but there's except for the Bruins picks. But they have a chance now to at least add somebody that can be part of this.
Absolutely. I think a lot of drafts get undersold and overhyped, and sometimes the legacy of those drafts isn't anywhere near commensurate with the hype that preceded it. No. So, I'm not down and think, oh crap, it's not going to be any good this year. You're picking top 10, you should get an impactful NHL player. And right now, that sounds wonderful.
It does. And this is where the Bruins, I feel need to identify a few different areas. They should take the best player available, of course, if there's a guy that really stands out at that position, wherever it is. But if you want that next franchise center, this is really the kind of pick where you need to take that guy and identify that guy if he's there and draft and develop him and, build him up from the ground in your own program and your own organization and develop him up. Instead of trying to go the free agent route like they did with Elias Lindholm, or trying to trade for a guy that was drafted and developed by a different system, a different organization. Really, if you want to solve that center problem, that number one center problem, that, how are we going to replace Patrice Bergeron? Who are we going to bring in here? That's obviously an unfair mantle to throw on anybody. But I think the only way you're going to adequately and correctly do that is by drafting your guy, developing him, and bringing him up through your system. Exactly the guy that you scouted, that you wanted, exactly the guy that you've done all the background on, that you like his makeup, you like the way he plays, all that stuff. And make sure you get your guy instead of taking some other organization's guy and trying to make it your number one guy. They will have a really good opportunity with this first round pick to take that guy, or maybe there's a big power forward out there that, a Brady Tkachuk style player, not like him, but that kind of, I think the Bruins
I'd like it to be like him.
Right. But you know what I mean? I'm just saying, I don't know if there's that guy in the draft, but that style of player, target a guy like that, value a player like that, try to find that kind of player that's out there, because the Bruins have needed that player for a long time. Or, a number one defenseman type as well, a young one that you can bring along now that Charlie McAvoy is getting into his mid to late 20s. Lowry will be there for a little while. You've got Hampus Lindholm. Drafting a number one type defenseman, a potential franchise defenseman now as an 18-year-old, it would be a great situation for him to go in, given the defenseman core that they have there, and him being able to learn on the fly with that kind of a group. So, there's a lot to be said for going all the different directions with this player, but I think any one of them, would significantly help the Bruins and could be a real impact to them. They just have to make sure, Mick, they hit a home run with this pick.
Absolutely.
You can't have an Earl Vakanainen, Trent Frederick. Maybe this guy's a first rounder, maybe he's not. You can't have that kind of a miss with this pick. Even going back to a guy was it Zach Hamill? Was that the guy they took in the top 10? Wasn't that his name?
Yeah.
I think way back when he came from the WHL and he never really made it.
Well, he had this, I had a talk with Rob Murray when he was still coaching the Providence Bruins and asked him, would Zach have been an NHL player, given better circumstances? And he said, absolutely. Because I used to question his speed, but he had a lot of skill, and the Bruins thought that he could be a Bergeron type of player for them. There were other things that kind of got in the way of all that, and didn't pan out for him. But they got to avoid players with asterisks.
Yeah,
and they got to make sure that they don't. I mean, I think that they've been doing this right along. Matt Poitras was an attempt at this. Dean Letourneau was an attempt at this. I feel like they're going all different directions to try to every conceivable way that they can identify a player who might bloom now, later, in between. To Middlestat is another potential. Let's see if we can take. Zacha was an attempt at this. You sign Eric Hall in free agency. You see Pavel Zacha, who was, I think, 6th overall in that 2015 draft, but sort of was meandering with the Devils, and the Bruins were watching him intently and saying, this kid is big. He skates beautifully. He competes. It just isn't working for him there. Let's do something with these guys as they want to mature their team and have more instant now kind of impact. And the Holla for Zacha trade was done. And then you have Zacha say, okay, Pavel, here's what we're going to do with you. You're going to sit here and watch Patrice Bergeron every shift that he plays while you're sitting on the bench, and we're going to play you with Krejci. And you're going to get to meld with him and watch him on the ice close up and personal. And then there have been situations where they wanted to farm him up as a center. They weren't sustaining it late in the season. But then this year, Monty moved him to the middle because he was going so well when so many other players were not. Yeah. And so he's been there ever since. And Zacha, I think, has been their most consistent player this season.
Yeah, no, definitely. And on the best line, I think Morgan Geekie the second half of the year has been fantastic too.
Yes, he has. As has Pastrnak. I mean, those guys didn't start well, but they came along. Zacha's stats might not have been there at the beginning, but I loved his second and third efforts before Monty got canned. He was terrific, and Monty recognized it and pushed him to the middle to affect more of the game. And it wound up being probably the best thing the Bruins did all season long.
Yeah, and I also think David Pastrnak wants him as a center, and I don't think that hurts either when the best team wants – you're the preferred center of the guy that is the best player on the team and the best scorer, so that certainly helps as well. All right, let's take a break to give some love to Prizepicks. Prizepicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Join over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players – they could be pros or sharks. Simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun, and it's super duper simple. Prizepicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. On Prizepicks, you can mix and match player projection from different sports. Combine your favorite hockey players with players from basketball, baseball, esports, and much more. Here are some picks for this week. Connor Bedard, under 20 minutes time on ice. Dylan Larkin, over 2.5 shots on goal. Love Dylan Larkin, great player. Radko Gudas, over 3.5 hits. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prizepicks. Prizepicks now offers Venmo, MasterCard, and Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prizepicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prizepicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prizepicks, run your game. All right, Mick. Let's answer some fan questions here. Kip Wingirter on Twitter wants to know, tell me if the Bruins' lack of offensive creativity with moving the puck to where it needs to be is a lack of coaching or a lack of player hockey smarts. 5-on-3, you always should get great scoring chances. What do you think, Mick? Is this coaching, or is this like players just not having high enough IQ, high enough creativity, not being willing to take chances or having confidence to take chances? What do you think it is?
Well, he contextualized the statement at the end by saying 5-on-3, you should always have scoring chances.
Yep.
So clearly he was in reaction to a 5-on-3 that did not generate the number of chances or the quality of chances that he thought they should. Stuff like that happens. I mean, I think in a season when you have so many things go wrong and so much bad soup happening, that it's hard to isolate a situation and say, okay, let's snap into how we should play and how we want to play and have everything go the way we want. In hockey, it never happens quite like that. Sometimes you get a new guy who jumps on the ice and everything goes crazy good. Bruins haven't had a lot of that this year. For them, everything has been hard. Everything's been a grind. And the best performances of this team have been fought for over months at a time. Pastrnak coming up big later in the season, Georgii emerging as a top six forward. These things are just things that they grinded this out. Nothing's come easily for them this year. So why can't it be that way? I'd rather see the do-over of this season with the new parts next year and then judge the individual players where it concerns that kind of a question.
Yeah. This is an audition process this year, though, Mick. You know, they're auditioning for who's going to be with this team next year, what roles they're going to play. And this is why, because it's basically a lost season. We've talked about this. I think the players know it. Everybody knows it. It was very evident talking to them, even though they were trying to say the right things in the locker room after the game last night, and that OT lost to Buffalo. But shouldn't this also be the time where you start bringing up young players to look at them in these situations as well, and bring up some of the Providence Bruins guys for the rest of this season? I really think we're starting to get to that point where you should, shuttle in the new guys that you've traded for, but also shuttle in the guys that are down in Providence. And that leads into this question from KD _iceberg on Twitter. If Sacco doesn't play around with the lines and bring up other players, I will lose my mind. Witherspoon and Mitchell need to sit for Callahan and anyone else. Sacco, if you can't see this, I don't want you around for next year. Too much same old in quotation marks. The Parker Witherspoon had a lot of struggles the last few games. He did have a nice
great touchdown pass last night.
He did. He had a nice pass last night that set up Georgii for a goal. Ian Mitchell has definitely struggled as well as they're getting a look at him. Down in Providence, Fraser Minten, the guy that they got in the Brandon Carlo trade, had a hat trick the other night, looked really good.
A natural hat trick. Wow.
That's correct. I think there's definitely a little bit of a groundswell to want to see what he looks like.
Everybody's clamoring for Minten right now.
Yes. Oliver Wahlstrom had 6 goals in his first 6 games in Providence after clearing through waivers. You saw Fabian, Lysell, and Merkulov are down there right now. There's a bunch of players down there right now. Why not bring some of those guys up at this point and get looks at them, especially guys like Merkulov and Lysell, where even if you feel like their play hasn't quite merited it, I think you need to get a look at them, like a handful of games, and put them in and get a real sort of adequate look at those players and judge them based on what they can do at the NHL level or what they can't do, and then act accordingly after the season is out. But I think they're at a crossroads, both of those players, where you kind of need to get the answer on whether they can play or not. I think they know Matt Patrick can play at the NHL level. It's just a matter of getting a little bit stronger, getting a little savvier, continuing to gain his confidence. But I think they've seen enough from him to know that he can play at this level and he's going to be able to fill some kind of a role for this team. Mason Lohrei, he's been here all year. They obviously know he can play at this level. But I think some of those other young guys, they need to determine whether they are NHL level players or not, and then move on from them.
So I'll try to take them individually as quickly as I can.
Yep.
I think they've already decided that Merkulov is not going to be an NHL player with the Boston Bruins. I'm going to take a wild guess. I have nothing to base this on, but I'm going to guess that they tried to trade him and tried to trade Fabian Lysell, and they were not able to get anything done. I think that Lysell is obviously his own case. He's got the raw skills to play in the NHL, but he's never been able to put it together. And until he proves himself at the Providence level, none of the pro scouts who sit in that arena night after night after night or watch them on the road are going to report to the general managers that they should go get this guy. So it's tough to put a Minten ahead of a guy like that. Thus, you get a guy like Patrick Brown here who earns everything he gets. So that kind of thing happens. So it's a tough situation because what they don't want to do is create dissension or take the wind out of NEP Bruins sails and create a situation where it's no longer a team with something to play for in a postseason, that the development there and a competition there is probably in a much better place than what it can be in Boston. So what they wanted, and I think that's part of the reason that Patra is there, is so that he can finish out his season in a place where a team has something to play for, and a team is playing well as a group, and he can grow the right way in a team concept that is functional and moving forward. And I think that's genius of them. I think it's extremely smart. And I'm looking forward to the results of all of that, because I think that if they can be patient with that, so it's really tricky trying to decide what are you going to recall from Providence right now. I think Callahan is somebody they wanted to give a long look to this year, because he's, according to Ryan Mougenel, he really played himself out of the American League. And so he's a kid who came from out of nowhere, who did his time at PC and became a pro, and has really got the all-around game going well. And so I think Wotherspoon is a more seasoned veteran pro who's a tough guy, and he punches way above his weight. So I think that's probably when, Callahan had some tough games there, so they decided to put him back in Providence. He cleared waivers, which surprises me a little bit, because he's a serviceable NHL player now. Mitchell's a right shot, so that's a whole different ball of wax. And I think the only reason he's here is because the Bruins don't have enough right shots. It's a whole different deal over there.
After trading Carlo.
Yeah. So, they played a chunk of this season with Callahan and or Wotherspoon playing right side as a left shot, which is, in today's hockey, is really kind of you don't do that. Well, you might have to. So anyway, that's where I'm at on all of that. I think it's tricky because you don't want to mess up Providence. It's the one good thing that might happen for them, and those things are critical to player development as well.
No, definitely. I do think, though, like an asset like Fabian Lysell, I think you need to look at him more at the NHL level. You're probably right about Merkulov, because he's been up for, 5-6 games this year. He had a little mini stretch where he came up and was given a chance. He certainly was given a shot for a few games in a more of a top 6 kind of look. So they gave him that look, at least for a couple games. He's had more of a legitimate chance to at least show what he can do. Lysell has not. And I'm not saying he's earned it, because I don't think he has. And I'm not saying you're wrong to say that he should earn it before he gets here. But, I am getting, God love Patrick Brown, hustles, does all the right things, plays gritty, good veteran player. God bless the guy.
Threw a great hit on the forecheck last night.
Honestly, he works his bag off. And it's
does.
You got to take your hat off and salute that guy for what he does.
Absolutely.
Right? No question about it. But he's not
a prospect.
No, he's not going to help this team 2 years from now. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to ask for him in a trade. Nobody's going to claim him if he gets put on waivers. I think you need to put Fabian Lysell in a situation at some point down the stretch in these meaningless games. Let him play a few in a row and see what he can do. Maybe he pops and he has a game where he scores a couple goals and he decides he really wants to be an NHL player. And some team sees that and says, oh, he's on our radar now, or we like that guy. And maybe it helps you trade him in the offseason. I'm just saying, I think there is benefit to bringing him up and playing him for a few games, especially where he's only played one game this year in his entire career in the NHL.
Yeah, and it wasn't bad.
And it was, but you need to give him more of an extended look. He was on the ice for them scoring a goal in his first shift, and everybody pretended like he was a part of it, or he assisted or did. Yeah. He didn't. He was out there.
He almost assisted on an opponent's goal later in the game, but that's another story.
Yeah. But I think you need to give him at least a couple of games down the stretch here, given the situation that they're in. All right, let's take another break real quick to talk about our friends at Gametime. If you need any kind of tickets whatsoever, with the final stretch run for the Bruins here in the NBA playoffs right around the corner, now is the time to dig into the Gametime ticket app. The app is super easy to use and has tons of great features for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and all kinds of other tickets. There's great features. Priority Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks, which filters out the fluff. and only gives you good deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All in pricing. Toggle this feature and it shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at the checkout. And who hates surprise fees more than me? Nobody, probably. Maybe Mick does, but like almost nobody hates more surprise fees more than I do. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Today's super deal is April 1st. Bruins versus Capitals, Loge Corner 3, Row 7 for $289. Get on Gametime right now and get those tickets to maybe see Ovi break the record, Gretzky's record at the Garden. Who knows? Maybe if you get tickets now, maybe that's going to happen. Certainly it might be his last game as an NHLer at TD Garden, so it might be worth getting tickets to that game. All right, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create the account and redeem CLNS for $20 off your first purchase at Gametime. Download Gametime today. What time is it, Mick?
Korpisalo drop kick. Gametime.
Hey, you know what? Let's first of all, Korpisalo has been excellent this year.
Love him.
What is it? It's the seventh man, right?
The seventh player award.
The seventh player. I would give it to Korpisalo. Like, I know Morgan Geekie might get it, but
Morgan Geekie is probably going to get it.
Yeah.
Kastelik was the clubhouse leader early on. I think you got a great pick there.
But I think Korpisalo could earn it too. You know,
he could. I think that we don't have a great candidate this year, but we got a few good ones.
Yep.
I love Zaka's consistency this year. He's always been there. He's one of the
definitely
few guys
feel
I
like
can
it's not going to go to
about.
like a young player though, like it had been recently, where it seemed like
no, it could have been you, Fabian Lysell. How about Yoki Haru?
Yes,
best thing that's ever happened to Nikita Zadorov.
That's true.
And they got to sign him as UFA.
Yeah, no, he's been good. They should definitely sign him. I think he's been a solid player for them.
Very calm.
Yep, he's exactly like I love Brandon Carlo, but like that's like more the defenseman that I think you need to get, as a calm guy that makes solid plays, that doesn't like make you notice when he makes a mistake, like doesn't make really like you're watching, you're like, what the hell was that? What just happened? You know, like there was too many times with Carlo this year where he just made huge boo-boos on the ice, and it was like very obvious and very problematic. And he didn't have that smooth, like wrinkle-free game. Yokohara has smooth, wrinkle-free,
solid, hard puck plays.
You don't notice him a lot. And then I did notice him because he stood somebody up at the blue line last night.
That's right. He did, right on our side of the rink.
It was a great play.
Yeah, it was. You know? He was a good hard hit.
Yep. Good old-fashioned hockey, Mick. But Korpisalo, getting back to him, he's had an excellent season. And it's so funny, like how many people were so down on him before the year started, just trashing that trade, saying we got this lousy, the worst goaltender in the NHL.
The Bruins had just done the same thing with Linus Ullmark the year 2-3 years before that. Don't they? Just be recent with your history, and you'll.
But the guy's got like 300 NHL games. If you were the worst goalie in the NHL, you would not get like 300 NHL games on your resume.
And he had a very good stint with the Los Angeles Kings after the trade deadline, and got 2 wins off the Edmonton Oilers the year before they went to the Stanley Cup final. I mean, this guy can play.
But let's appreciate how good goalies can get, Mick, at drop kicking the puck when they're pissed off. Like,
that was legendary. I want to see that highlight in a loop.
Even kids that have only been playing goalie for a few years, my Pee-wee goalies, Andrew, my Pee-wee goalie on the Pee-wee 1 team I coach, is already an expert at drop kicking at punting the puck all the way across the ice.
That's great.
And he's only like 11 years old, you know, like, so like
that takes skating balance.
The goalies by that point, they are absolute masters when it comes to punting the puck when they're aggravated about something. And it was hilarious to see that last night. What'd you think of the officiating at the end of that game? Were you did you have a big problem with it?
No, I kind of felt like the Bruins, I felt like there were a couple things that were missed. I think one thing I recall in the early third period is that there was a play where someone got violated in a way that made me realize all over again that if you're not a superstar in this league, if you're not one of the skill guys, a top liner or something, and the rules completely change on what opponents can do to you and take you down illegally in order and escape penalties because, oh yeah, you're not going to get that. Parker Wotherspoon's not going to get that kind of a call. Johnny Beecher's not going to get that kind of a call. It just doesn't work that way. And that was what that was my lasting takeaway from last night, was that the calls just confirmed over and over again that who is the victim of the infraction really helps determine whether or not the whistle gets blown.
Yep. No, it's funny how that works. It's a superstar league, right? Those things happen. I think you definitely see some players get calls, some don't. But you could see last night, I think the refs just wanted the game to be over.
Running time.
That was one of those games where, even in warmups, you could tell there was two teams that were out of it, and they kind of played like it the whole game. So it's just one of those playing out the strings sort of games.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and Buffalo's playing for pride right now. They're actually on an uptick.
And Joe Sacco wasn't worked up after it was over either.
I think that poor guy.
Yeah, he
took one for the team this year, and I hope like hell that it doesn't negatively impact his future.
He's had enough for sure. All right. Mick, thank you very much for joining us. Let's also thank our sponsors, Prizepicks. Download the Prizepicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prizepicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prizepicks, run your game. Let's also thank our folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS on the Gametime app for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
Game time. All right. Thank you very much, everybody out there, for listening. Mick, thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the rink.